as you and Nancy, even in the later years, have gone to Hawaii together and would both be delighted to stay on the beach. You've stayed far off the beach in a free house. And so all that to say, I know you're not the lifestyle police or mandating that stuff, but you have lived sacrificially. And I would love for you to just reflect a little bit on how you've managed this tension between caring for your family, which of course is biblically commanded and good for us to do, and given generously, which is also biblically commanded and good for us to do. And so how have you navigated that tension, and how would you encourage us in that?
Well, one thing that really helped me years ago, Matt, and everyone, is just coming to grips with the reality that my biggest responsibility to my children is not to leave them an inheritance, but to leave them a heritage. And Nancy and I felt very deeply about that. We saw so many people in this culture. Now, if we were talking to people in a relatively poor culture, I would say you definitely pass on your land, the place you live in, your business to your children if they want it and they want to work on it, because that comes like it was in biblical times. That comes with the nature of an economy. But we live in a very different one that we saw in biblical times, where many, many young people grow up in the home, and dad was a farmer or a salesman, and mom was a CEO of this or that, and one of the kids is a doctor, one's a lawyer, one's a teacher, whatever they choose. And so the family land is not at all essential to what they're doing with their life, and they're making sufficient incomes. In many cases, they're making more than their parents. And even if they're not now, they ultimately will make more than their parents. So to me, I look at our kids, one's married, one's a nurse who's married to a school teacher, one is does some financially related work, and her husband is a pastor in Southern California. And when I look at them, I think in terms of, hey, we'll be generous, and we have been, and we'll take them on vacations place. The whole family's getting together again this next spring. We took them to Hawaii together, and it was down on the beach. They wouldn't fit in our friend's house for free. So, we figured, hey, other people pay, we can pay too. And we did, and no regrets. And it was wonderful. We helped them buy their first home, down payments, their first home. I mean, not the whole thing, but a good, portion of it. We're giving to them in this life when they need it. But we believe that God has entrusted wealth to us, and I still say us, and I will probably for a long time, Nancy and me, in order to honor him through what we do with it. It does not belong to us, but in a secondary sense, we say it's ours in that we are the ones entrusted with the stewardship of it in a way that our children are not. God is entrusting money, finances, assets, material things to our children, and will to our grandchildren. And that's the money entrusted to us is not theirs. It's God's first, and then it's ours second, to do with it what we believe we hear his voice saying to do with it. So to me, we're in a very different place than a lot of people. I mean, we are leaving some money for our children, and certainly we're helping our grandchildren while they're just two of them are just entering college, and we'll help some with that. We'll do other things. But in the end, the majority, when I die, the majority of the estate that's left after I do more giving will also go to God's kingdom. They all know that, explained that to them years ago. They're all on board with it. They understand. And what I make clear to them is, hey, if you really needed this, I'd give it to you in a heartbeat. I'd give it all to you right now, if it would really actually help you. But what's going to happen is the average middle class estate even now. I mean, it's crazy. The house that we bought for $49,000, we're now paying taxes on it, and I just dread it every time the value of my house goes up, is now worth over $600,000. Well, in Oregon, 20 years ago, you couldn't find in where we live, you could not find a house that cost over $500,000. I remember when we first saw one, we just went, "You've got to be kidding!" And our $49,000 house is that. I'm just saying, we lived on minimum wage for 20 years. This is not unusual for middle class people, and obviously in some parts of the country, you're laughing because you know that a lower middle class person, there's some places their home is worth $500,000 and more. And so but to us, this is just crazy. And so my question is, what would my kids do with it if I gave it to them? Well, I think they'd be generous, and maybe they give 10% or 20% or 30%. I kind of, in some ways, hope they might just give it all away because they're all doing fine. They got good cars. Their cars are nicer than mine, and I don't resent that at all. I'm glad they are. I'm just saying, we made our choices, and we make our choices which God entrusts with what God entrusts to us. So bottom line of that is the vast majority of it is going to go away to God's kingdom, and quite a bit more is going to go to God's kingdom while I'm still alive. If that means selling the house before I die and then giving it away, or I die while I'm in the house, either way. That's out of love for our children. We have seen what wealth does to unearned wealth is one of the greatest curses that there is. And you've got to prepare. If you're going to give them a lot of wealth, you better have prepared them for it. Ironically, I think our kids are prepared for it, but we still are making the choices we're making.